Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, we're widening this out. I've tried everything else. We've done rundown after rundown after rundown. I'm going to try this out. See if I can, turn around the luck here. Also, I forgot to do a rundown. That may have played a role in the way that the show looks right now. But at the end of the day, this one is pretty straightforward. We're going to talk a little bit about the Lakers quotes coming out of practice today as they acknowledge the magnitude of the situation that they find themselves in. We're going to briefly touch on Maxi Kleber and his injury situation, as he is now currently listed questionable for tomorrow's game after missing a lot of time. And then I'm going to hand this thing over to you. This might be the last episode of this show, or at least mailbag episode of this show of the season. So if you guys have any questions, hit me with them. We already have some from Twitter. I'm checking on iTunes to see if we have any there. And then let's see. Yeah, all right. So we don't have any from iTunes, but we do have some from Twitter. I'm sure we're going to get some here from excuse me. The reason there was a bit of a pause before we went live is because of this cough that I am currently battling and losing to. But yeah, we have a ton to get to today. So let's go ahead and dive on in. Hold on one second.
Welcome everybody to the Locked On Lakers podcast.
Paul George really hit the side of the backboard.
It was wide open. I can't even make sense.
Lou Williams, he said they just came together this year, as if that was an excuse, like the other team in the conference finals didn't do that.
Well, what happened was it doesn't even matter.
You know, we didn't have time to get it together. You know, like we just.
Did he say that with like lemon pepper wings in his mouth? Is that what happened there?
You're licking it off his
Like,
fingers.
oh man, there were some absences that cost us some
I
time.
just can't quite figure
Picking
out
it out of his teeth.
why we don't have any chemistry.
It's like Lou, in your mic'd up segment, you.
All right, I'm alive. I feel a lot better. Wow. You ever get those coughing attacks? I drank some water down the wrong tube, and you guys did not need to see me deal with that on the air. So anyway, today on the show, we're going to be talking about JJ and everybody's quotes coming out of practice. We're going to be talking about Maxi Kleber's injury update. We'll be talking about whatever you want to talk about. So again, let's dive on in. Quick reminder, please do hit subscribe wherever it is that you guys are watching right now. So if you guys are on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. And then if you guys are on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. And then if you guys are listening in the morning to me listen, if I'm coming through your car stereo speakers, hit that subscribe button and tell your friends about the show, all of that good stuff. Let's go ahead and dive on in. So first and foremost, I was not particularly thrilled with one of the things that JJ Redick had to say about fatigue in the fourth quarter. So this is from Dave McMenamin, who tweeted, JJ Redick on a film review from the fourth quarter of Game 4 showed any fatigue from his players. Quote, no. And you know what? what did we score? 19, 20, and 13 in the fourth quarter of the losses in the series. It's a trend more so than that. Our two best players missed layups at the rim, end quote. So I would maybe inquire as to whether or not he thinks the fatigue played a role in some of those misses at the rim. I think that's worth asking about and wondering about. But also, like, I'm not expecting him to come with some mea culpa there. I'm not expecting JJ Redick on what might be the eve of the final game of the season sitting there saying like, yeah, I blew that. My bad. He also doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who says my bad all that time, all that much. So I don't think it was always kind of unrealistic to hope that JJ Redick in that moment would show some introspection and be like, all right, yeah, whoopsie. And he didn't, right? And he took that opportunity. I wouldn't call it a shot. It wasn't a shot. It was just acknowledging that LeBron and Luka have missed some easy shots and that the rest of the Lakers have missed some easy shots. But I would like to know if there was more introspection as to why the Lakers have struggled scoring in the fourth quarter. That was supposed to be a strength coming into the series. You guys heard me talk about this with John Krasinski of The Athletic, who also noted coming into the series that was something he was worried about. But apparently, it doesn't appear that we got too much of that introspection that we were kind of looking for there. He said that the team was on edge and that he's hoping that they play with a sense of desperation. Here's the thing about the playoffs is that like it shouldn't take you getting your backs all the way up against the wall for you to finally start playing with some desperation. And I think for some stretches in the series, the Lakers have played with some desperation. And when they have looked like the much better team. Not just the better team, but the much better team in those moments. It also, I would say, the one concern with desperation is sometimes you see some shortcuts trying to be found and trying to be taken, and that doesn't always work out either. So again, it's the discipline, it's the attention to detail in the game plan. It's a game plan that actually adjusts over the course of the series. In this series, the offensive game plan, we saw one, I think, pretty good adjustment there in the third quarter, setting some more of those vertical or north and south screens rather than the lateral screens that are just set so that Luka can or whoever can get whatever matchup that they want. And maybe we'll see a little bit more of that. Minnesota didn't seem to know what to do with those screens. I would also hope that, again, you try to find a way to involve LeBron and Luka in something this season. It hit me today. I don't think this is how it's going to play out, but it hit me today sitting there on the couch, just kind of staring off into the abyss. The abyss that if the season ends tomorrow, there's a very real chance that the season will end or would end excuse me, with LeBron and with Luka just not really doing anything together over the entirety of the time that they played on the same team. And then to take that a step further, again, I don't think this is how it's going to play out. But LeBron could kind of look at the Lakers becoming a Luka organization. He could be looking around at his situation. I don't think he wants to play for another city. He got to play with his son. But he could look around and be like, yeah, I think that's it. And so if Luka and LeBron finish off this regular season and then get gentlemen swept in this series without ever having run anything together, that's kind of a blemish on JJ's coaching resume that I don't know will ever come out. Like maybe he'll have a nice long career as a coach. Maybe we'll one day look back on this first foray into the postseason and laugh at some of the mistakes that he made compared to whatever he accomplishes down the line. But even if he does wind up having a nice long coaching career, if that is how this plays out, I don't know that I'll ever be able to forget what led to this situation playing out the way that it did. We saw, like, this is a fun stat from earlier today. I retweeted it, so it should be on my time. Here it is. So Sam Quinn of CBS, the Lakers in the series, games 1 through 3, their offensive rating was 107.7. It's fine, but it's not good. And it's definitely not where it needs to be. Their offensive rating in games 1 through 3, 107.7, and they completed an average of 251.7 passes per game in games 1 through 3. And then in game 4, they carried an offensive rating of 121.5. That is elite offense. And in game 4, they passed the ball, excuse me, 286 times. And I would imagine that's even with the steep decline in the fourth quarter compared to the rest of that game, and specifically compared to the third quarter where the ball was really humming. And I've said it all series, and I'm going to continue saying it. So if you guys are sick of hearing it, go find a different show. But I just don't believe in dribble, like not just Luka, everybody who is guilty of this. He just happens to be most guilty of it. But whether it's Luka, LeBron, Austin, dribble, maybe kick out the ball and and then kind of go from there. No, the ball needs to find some energy. It needs to find some kinetic energy, not just potential energy, because that's that's essentially the problem that the Lakers are having right now. Is that the ball crosses half court, and it's right there with whoever's, again, it's been mostly Luka in these situations, but it crosses half court and there's a ton of potential energy on the ball, right? He could kick the ball to Rui. He could throw the skip across the court to the shooter in the corner. He could turn the corner and get all the way to the bucket, as we tend to see him in the first couple of quarters when he's feeling fresh. He could do those things. That's potential energy on the ball. And in the third quarter of game 4, we saw that potential energy become actual and kinetic energy, where the ball is actually moving. The ball is actually getting into the paint and then being kicked out to shooters. And then also importantly, because the ball gets into the paint and Minnesota gets into the blender, the Lakers were even able to get a couple offensive rebounds in that third quarter because Minnesota's defense was all out of sorts. But the one thing that the Lakers cannot do, and unfortunately it's a thing that the Lakers have absolutely relied on the most in the series, is sitting on the ball with a ton of potential energy and allowing Minnesota's defense to just get 5 pairs of eyes on the ball and be ready and in good position to go in there and get the rebound too and clear out that possession. That is the one thing that the Lakers have to stop doing. And unfortunately, I didn't see any quotes about this from JJ after practice today, but unfortunately, that potential energy, it just doesn't feel like it's really going anywhere. So hopefully, look, fingers crossed that actually we watch that game tomorrow and the ball has a ton of kinetic energy on it and the Lakers kick the Minnesota Timberwolves ass. I feel like that's kind of the way that the Lakers have to win tomorrow. is by beating the shit out of Minnesota. Because if it's a close game, I feel like we're going to run into these problems all over again. The other thing too is the nice thing about and like quotes after practice, they're also part of the strategy. I almost said strategery. They're also part, excuse me, of the strategy of the series where you don't want to give too much away. It's not like JJ is going to sit there and the rest of the Lakers are going to sit there and be like, man, we found something in that tape. Oh boy, we can't wait to unveil that, right? Because they see what we saw. We saw the defense in the third quarter. We saw the defense as it's played out in the fourth quarter and all this entire series. And I'm sure that with the proof of concept that we got in game 3, or at least I'm hoping that with the proof of concept that we got in game 3, that JJ, that Luka, that LeBron, that Austin, that all of those guys get on the same page and stay disciplined and keep each other disciplined when it comes to running offense, getting that ball moving, and actually making Minnesota's, again, they're a bigger team. The way that you topple big teams or the way that you topple big guys in fights is to dance a bunch, right? You dance, you change the angles on where the punches are coming from. You don't allow the heavyweight boxer to plant their feet and just turn their trunk and just wail on you all fight. Otherwise, it's a short fight. And that's how this series has gone. The Lakers offensively have allowed this heavyweight boxer to sit there with their feet nice and comfortable and just sit there and wail on their offensive strategy. And that's just not a sustainable model. And hopefully we've seen the last of it. All right, let's go ahead and oh shoot, I got to talk. Maxi Kleber is listed as questionable in tomorrow's game. I'm not gonna lie. This feels a hell of a lot like clearing Christian Wood and clearing Jared Vanderbilt at the end of last season. I don't know if I would go so far as to say it's, mind games or preparation games or anything like that. But I just don't see a world in which Maxi goes from not playing at all for the Lakers to playing with the season literally on the line. Like I don't see that being an option here for JJ. What I do hope is an option is that JJ kind of gets out of his own way, lightens up on Jackson, and gives him an opportunity to. Jackson's going to make mistakes. He made mistakes in the regular season too. This isn't like new territory for JJ guarding Jackson. Get out of your way. Let him go out there. Maybe limit some of their possessions with rebounding. Maybe generate an extra possession or two with his offensive rebounding. But I just don't think it's again, I'm using the term again, sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable with this rotation to rely on small ball, because it is actually small ball against this team because of Minnesota's positional size. It is actually small ball that the Lakers are playing. You can't play small ball for 44 minutes of a 48-minute game. I just don't see that. That feels like the Suns, the 7-second or less Suns, really clamping down on their margin for error. The Houston Rockets that the Lakers obliterated on their way to the 2019-2020 championship. Size matters in sports and specifically in basketball. I know he's not comfortable with it. I know he's not comfortable with Jackson Hayes. I know he doesn't trust Jackson Hayes. But the Lakers do need to find a way to be bigger than they have been in this series, especially in the second half. And again, you've tried this approach for 4 games to this point. You're down 3-1. You can't keep beating your head up against this brick wall without even looking for a door, without even looking for a gateway, without even looking for a soft spot in said wall. You can't keep on trying the same thing and expecting the different results as the Lakers have in this series to this point. All right, now I'll go ahead and wow, we have a lot of questions. So I'll start with, as I normally do, with the start comments. Excuse me, man. I was fine all day, the whole day, and I took one swig of water. That's the problem. I have water next to me, not wine. It's a rookie move on my part. All right. So the first question comes in here from JK Productions, who writes, kind of think a healthy pre-Luka trade does a team better, does in this series than the current roster, deeper, better use of Austin, better defense and balance. Oh, I see what you're saying. I mean, look, the Lakers were figuring something out at the time of the Luka trade. And be absolutely clear, I don't regret that the Lakers traded for Luka Doncic. That is not where I stand on this. But just for the sake of answering this question, and JK, you're trying to get me in trouble here. But I would probably agree that that group with Austin and Max starting together, the type of closing ability that we saw from LeBron and Austin, they were running those 3-man sets with LeBron, Austin, and AD. They were damn near unstoppable. It just felt like a more diverse offense. They had more physicality defensively. You had actual size that JJ Redick was comfortable with. So, yeah, I would probably say, and look, the margins in the series have been really small. So, like you could just swing one variable in the Lakers' favor that has gone Minnesota's way, and it's 3-1 in their favor, right? So, I don't think this is even that crazy of a thing to say. Is that like if you, I mean, shit. I don't know how beatable Minnesota is with Julius Randle playing the way he has. He's been unbelievable in this series. And a lot of the attention has been paid on him offensively, on the shooting, and rightly, because it's so far out of the norm for him. I'm telling you, when he shoots like 30% in the next series, I'm going to kick a chair. Anyway, but as much attention as we've spent on Julius Randle, the offensive player, defensively, he's been really good too. And he's really thrown a wrench into what the Lakers have been trying to do offensively because of the defense that he's playing and the physicality that he's been allowed to play with. He just runs around and fouls everybody the whole game. And referees to this point have just decided, well, we can't foul him out. So I would, venture, I guess, to say that he wouldn't look this good against an Anthony Davis front court or an Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Rui Hachimura front court. But shit, he could shoot over those guys, I guess. And if he shot in that series the way that he has shot in this one, then yeah, perhaps that could go in their favor. But yeah, I would say that immediately pre-Luka team, the one that had just beat the Knicks before the Lakers traded for Luka, that team was looking pretty damn good. And again, right move to trade for Luka, not just for now, but certainly moving forward with JJ or with AD being on the other side of 30. I am in no way whatsoever saying that the Lakers shouldn't have traded for Luka, but just for the sake of this series and this matchup in particular, I could see where you're going there. I could see what point you're trying to make there, and I don't disagree, I guess. The next one here comes from Ryan Lucas, who writes, JJ criticism is way overblown. The fourth quarter was a message. Role guys have been trash. Got to step up. Simple as that. I'll be at the game tomorrow. Fingers crossed. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you can overblow a coach doing something that no other coach in the modern era of the NBA has done before and have it backfire. I just thought it was really poor process. You do have playable guys there. People are acting as if it's like, 10 Bronnies sitting there on the bench. It's not. And no offense to Bronny, but people are acting as if like the Lakers just have no options there. And I just flat out disagree. I think there aren't options there, or the options there don't look that great because of the way that the Lakers are playing and because of the schematic approach to this. Hell, you could even say that they don't even have 5 guys who look the way that they should because of the schematic approach to this series. I think Austin has been bad for much of this series. I think a lot of that has to do with the approach that the Lakers have taken. And some of it is also on him. I think he looked really timid in the first half and then got into foul trouble as well. He was actively a harmful player in game 4 in that first half. And I don't even think how he shot in the second half of game 4 makes up for how bad he was. He had a bad game overall in game 4. And you just can't, if we came into the postseason calling him the third star, we got to hold him to that standard. And he's been bad by star standards. But again, we can't like not play Austin because now you're down to 4 people in your lineup, right? The thing that I think has been the most eye-opening outside of a couple of the actual decisions that JJ has made is the lack of belief that some of these role players now feel from the coaching staff, right? Jared Vanderbilt, when you watch him out there, the reason I think he's just running around in rogue mode is because he feels like he has a whole bunch of wasted energy that he's not playing, and then also because he hasn't been able to guard Anthony Edwards. The Lakers keep switching, and Minnesota keeps setting screens that lead to Jared Vanderbilt not guarding Anthony Edwards. Watch how hard some of Minnesota's guys work to avoid, and namely Jaden McDaniels. Watch how hard those guys work so that, all right, fine. You want to get to Luka, or you want to get to Rudy, you want to get to Conley, you want to get to Naz Reid, like, all right, fine. You want to get to that matchup, you're going to have to go through a few screens. And if you give the ball up, you're not getting it back. And the only guy who I think brings that kind of mentality, that kind of attitude to defense is Vanderbilt, but he hasn't been allowed to execute on that mentality, on that attitude, because the Lakers have just put him in a corner. So, we need to see a very different schematic approach here from the Lakers. And look, that starts with JJ. So I think that the game plan coming into the series didn't make a whole bunch of sense. The offensive game plan over the course of the series has been pretty abysmal, and we haven't seen much adjustment there. Not playing anybody outside of their starting 5 in the second half, I think that was a big mistake. Yes, we could call it a learning experience. We could call it whatever. But at the end of the day, we do also have to call it a bad performance from JJ Redick. Like, I sent out a tweet today, and, people seem to agree with it. JJ Redick is one of the hardest podcasters on coaches. Before he got a coaching gig, he was one of the few national voices who had no problem, because a lot of the excuse me, because a lot of the national voices in a lot of these, whether it's doing analysis for games or working for Sports Center or whatever. A lot of those guys are ex-coaches. Those guys don't go at coaches. I remember listening to Jeff Van Gundy. He would and Stan Van Gundy's like this too. Those guys will do whatever it takes to avoid calling out a coach in any spot. And it's actually kind of maddening, right? Because according to those guys, the coaches cannot make mistakes. And JJ was kind of this fresh antithesis to that. Calling out coaches. Hey, when are you going to run something? Hey, when are you going to do this? You can't call that timeout here. You can't do this there. You can't make that challenge there. It was great. I loved it. I kind of wonder how he feels about his performance. If podcaster JJ Redick saw a coach having the performance that head coach JJ Redick is having, how would podcaster JJ Redick analyze head coach JJ Redick? And I can't imagine he would be all that nice. All right, so let's see. We have another one here. Yeah, we do. Marley Villasenor writes, kicked ball, trip foul, 2 missed layups by Luka and Braun. Razor thin margin away from calling what JJ did a bold move that tied it 2-2. I agree with you somewhat, but it's also saying he's getting pantsed as much. It's not. I would have liked the result, but I would have hated the process had he been rewarded for that gamble. I would have. You guys know me. I'm a slave to process, and I just think, knowing what we know about how hard playoff basketball is, there's a reason no other modern coach has ever done that. And we've had some stubborn ass coaches. Tom Thibodeau is currently coaching a game right now. I'm watching him right now. Mike D'Antoni had a really short rotation. Phil would have a really short rotation. Pop had only a couple of guys off of his bench that he would trust. But all of those coaches found a way to spare his key guys some minutes so that they wouldn't be complete shells of themselves at the end of games. So yeah, like the Lakers could have won that game, but had they, you would have just been rewarding bad process. And again, I wouldn't be complaining about the result because cool. And I would have been absolutely heaping praise on the guys who, in this hypothetical, won that game. I think what we saw from those 5 guys is legitimately some of, and I tweeted that out at the time too, this is some of the gutsiest shit that we have ever seen in all of sports history. All of it. Just focusing on the sport. That was some of the most insane thing that I've ever seen any team try to do. And they almost did it. They almost were there. But that's the thing about whittling down your margin for error with a bad decision like that, is you do wind up getting right there, but not quite all the way there. And yeah, the good news is he won't try that again. JJ, you didn't fuck around. All right, the next one here comes from JK Productions. A 2-11 playoff record in our last 3 series hurts, man. Dude, I'm a Vikings fan, and this is getting ridiculous. Like, I have had some playoff losses in my life. Blair Walsh's field goal miss. Nick Anderson's field goal miss. Brett Favre throwing that interception in the NFC Championship game when he had the first down right in front of him. Adrian Peterson fumbling 5 times in that game. We can go all the way through here. Shoot, I was born, I'd like to look to see what year it was, but it's almost kind of perfect that the Hail Mary came at the expense of the Minnesota Vikings. Like, I'm telling you, I've lived through some sports shit, And this is I don't expect to get it from the Lakers in this way. And yet here we are. I've seen a lot of people saying like, you have different coaches and you've had different cores, and why is it that LeBron's team has this record, and especially in the clutch? And to be frank, I think that's heliocentric offense and him not being the engine that he used to be, and that affecting the way that those teams performed in those minutes too. You have to be diverse enough to take advantage of the other team's weakest link. And in this case, the Minnesota Timberwolves' weakest link isn't Naz Reid or Julius Randle or any of these guys guarding out in space. To me, the weakest link is Gobert when he has to go and help and rotate and dig and contest and then hustle back and do all that stuff. That's when the Minnesota Timberwolves are at their worst and at their weakest, is when you turn Rudy Gobert, who is arguably the best rim protector in the history of the sport, when you turn him into somebody who has to go and cover space and make him a worse version of himself. That's how you pick on a team's weakest link. But the Lakers haven't been able to do that consistently because they're so focused on pantsing him from, in front of everybody on the perimeter. I just think you could do some of that, but you also need to do some of this and some of that and some of this over there. Like, the lack of creativity, whether it's off the ball and getting the right guys coming up to set the screen without being bumped and pushed and pulled and all that stuff by the Wolves off of the ball, whether it's some of what they've done defensively hasn't really changed all that much, especially in the clutch. It's just been kind of hope and misses. So I would like to see the Lakers turn this 2-11 playoff record around. But if they don't, I would also like to see us as a fan base, that team, that franchise as an organization, that basketball team, that coaching staff take a real hard look, that superstar or those superstars between Luka and LeBron. I'd like to see those guys take a real hard look at their approach down the stretch and ask themselves the question that we're all asking, like, why is it that your offense continues to struggle down the stretch of these games? And to me, it's because while they are doing so much mismatch hunting and ISO stuff, you're completely taking the other guy out of the play. And then in Luka's case, if he's doing it, then like if it was LeBron matchup hunting and Nickeil Alexander-Walker was so focused on guarding Luka that he wasn't part of the play, and LeBron had that much more space to work with, all right. I see where you're trying to get to there. If it was Austin with the ball, and it was not Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels guarding Luka, and it was Anthony Edwards making sure that LeBron doesn't catch the ball over there, and now Austin can now operate in some of the mid-range area where he has been really good this season. All right, I see where you're kind of going with there. But the problem is that it's the same setup, it's the same players involved here, it's the same players involved defensively, and it's not punishing the guys who don't have to rotate or pay attention to their guy until there's 5 seconds left in the shot clock. And then at that point, you can close out as hard as you want because you know that the player has to shoot it. You're not going to get attacked on a closeout if Rui or Dorian or even Austin or LeBron are catching the ball after the ISO creates whatever the ISO creates. You don't have to, you could just close out as hard as you want. You could jump past them, because at best, after they go by you, they have one or two dribbles and then they have to get the shot up. You don't even have to worry about a rotation on the backside after the closeout gets attacked, because the Lakers are taking so long to even get to their ISO stuff. It's just, it's been such a maddening series. I'm gonna have a hard time. This was the first time I told this to Jen the other day. I was it was after game 4. That Sunday night was the first time in a long time, a really long time, that I had trouble falling asleep because I could hear myself yelling at the TV, "Go, Luca! Move the ball!" Like, I just hear this echo in my so, like, I'd kinda close my eyes, and it'd be like, "Go! Go!" And I'm like, "Ugh." And I don't think I fell asleep until and this was a night that I, didn't have to work late because the game was so early. I don't think I fell asleep until, like, 1:30 or 2, and, and there was no reason for that to be the case, and I was just dragging ass the whole next day because it's just me by myself with the kids working from home, and yeah, like, this series is gonna sit with me for a long time, and it's not a matter of me not respecting Minnesota. I wanna be I wanna be clear. They've had a really bleeping good series. Anthony Edwards is on an incredible trajectory as somebody who feels like the next face of basketball or somebody who's gonna be competing to be the next face of basketball for the next umpteen years. You've seen this defense with Jade McDaniels and Anthony Edwards and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and we talked about the defense that Julius Randle has been playing. And, oh, yeah, by the way, because of the way the Lakers are playing, they've allowed Rudy Gobert to be the best version of himself at times too. Is a really good Minnesota team. So when I say that this series is going to keep me up for a long time here moving forward, I'm not saying that as a shot at Minnesota, that the Lakers, should have swept them or should have done. I was probably overly confident with the Lakers in 5 thing, clearly. But I definitely don't think I would have never predicted in a zillion years that this could be a potential gentleman sweep. And yet here we stand. And the reason that we stand here is because it feels like the Lakers have been one of the worst versions of themselves they could have possibly been. And it's been them just taking a shotgun to each of their feet repeatedly over the course of these games. On that note, all right. Let's see. I'm going to go into some of the Twitter questions. At Bashir_1, it'll never happen, but what archetype of a player would you trade Austin for? Contract and trade value and all considered. I have thought about this way too much, and I got another question about this too. So at Michael Zhao, is AR a long-term fit? How seriously do you see the organization shopping around since he most likely won't take the extension offer? I don't think that him not taking the extension offer, I don't think that impacts how the Lakers feel about him. They love him. They love him, the guy. They remain, I believe, prepared to offer him this max extension here. They would obviously prefer he takes said max extension because it would save them upwards of 10-ish million bucks a year for the next 4 years off of their cap. But yeah, I don't think this series has changed in any way how the Lakers feel about Austin, the basketball player, let alone Austin, the dude. Lanar asking me if I'm okay. I am struggling through this stupid coughing fit that I've been dealing with. I apologize. But anyway, all right, what would I trade Austin for? I mean, first and foremost, if Giannis becomes available, less so if KD becomes available. But all right, so if Giannis becomes available and Milwaukee says we aren't even having a conversation about Giannis without Austin being at the top of that list, I would include Austin in that trade. And it would be bittersweet, obviously, but if Giannis is on the table and you could have a wing rotation of Luka, LeBron, and Giannis, yeah, you're kind of tight financially everywhere else on the roster, but you just kind of try to make that work. outside of the obvious guys that we're talking about, where Giannis is a top 5 player, I would say, I have been thinking a lot about Austin and Luka's fit and whether we're seeing a better version in a very different situation, a very different comparison, but a similar problem that Austin and D'Lo had, where there just isn't enough defensive wherewithal. There just isn't enough athleticism on the perimeter. Are we seeing a version of that? Let alone, by the way, the impact that ISO ball, mismatch hunt ball, Luka ball has had on the role that Austin's had in this series. Because if you're just gonna put the ball in Luka's hands as often and as frequently and for as long of the possession as the Lakers have, then you're kind of wasting Austin's creativity on the ball. And Austin's shot, we've seen this in the series where he hasn't looked all that comfortable shooting on the catch with half of a second to a second less than he normally has in the regular season. And if you can turn Austin basically into, the Knicks just lost. Good. If you could turn Austin into essentially a shooting guard who can defend his ass off, is a physical, a good physical point of attack defender who can get his shot off as quickly as possible. I'm thinking, like prime Clay, right? If you get not even prime Clay, but like Klay Thompson, that archetype of player who is really, really good on defense and specifically good at the point of attack, who is a fire alarm shooter. And if you could get that kind of a player and pair him with Luka, I can kind of see that. Or if you can get a more of an athlete who, like, I was watching some clips of Dallas last year, where it was Luka and Kyrie, and the biggest difference between the creativity that we saw from Kyrie last year and the creativity that we have not necessarily seen as much of from LeBron and Austin, beyond Luka, I'm talking about. The biggest difference there is Kyrie was turning the corner on everybody. Everybody. He was blowing by people, getting into the paint and collapsing the defense so that he would be kicking the ball out to open shooters with a whole bunch of space. Or even at sometimes he was kicking the ball out to Luka with space, which is crazy. So if you can either turn Austin into a better point of attack defender who is a knockdown shooter, or if you could turn Austin essentially into another ball handler who is more equipped athletically to go by guys and get into the paint and wreak havoc that way, then I can kind of see it. But I would be kind of bummed because I think that Austin and Luka can work. Like, how often have we seen Austin come up and set a screen for Luka the way that Austin was coming up and setting a screen for LeBron last season? It just hasn't happened. And if Austin is coming up to set a screen, it's always that ghost drag screen that, he barely touches the defender and he rotates out, pops his hips out, and he hopes to catch that pass from Luka on the perimeter, makes himself available to Luka on the perimeter. But the point is to get whoever is guarding Austin guarding Luka there. And there just hasn't been very much creativity there either. So ideally, the Lakers extend Austin, and the coaching staff takes a hard look at what they haven't been able to do with Austin and with Luka on the court at the same time, and they find a way to get more creative there, and the offense becomes more dynamic as a result. But if that isn't in the cards, if that isn't possible, and by the way, I hope we do get a nice shuffling of the deck with the assistant coaches this year. Any set of assistant coaches who doesn't step up there to tell Redick that's a really bad idea to not have any subs in the second half, you're not worth your weight in lead. So I would hope that they get an offensive engineer, basically, to put together a system that, and hopefully Luka signs off on this system too. But you find a way to take advantage of Austin's on the ball skills, which have gotten better over every step of his career to this point, and may get better again this offseason. You find a way to make Austin and Luka work, because if you basically tweak the Austin part of this, that's energy that you're not spending on the center spot. That's energy that you're not spending on bringing in more athleticism to your 3 spot. So, yeah, I would, as far as all of the questions about Austin, he's been bad. I've had a lot of people asking me, like, why aren't you saying that Austin has been bad? I feel like I've been pretty hard on Austin. I've offered context as to why I think Austin has been bad, on top of him just being bad, and on top of him being overwhelmed by the physicality. But people like accusing me of caping up for Austin. I'm really not. I feel like I'm a pretty fair guy, and I've been pretty fair with Austin. And I would hope that the Lakers find a way to make it work with him, not just this summer with an extension, which again I think that Austin is going to turn down for the sake of becoming a free agent at the end of next year. But if they're able to work out that extension, and they're able to bring in a screener who Austin can work with too. That's been the other part of this problem with Jackson Hayes, is because Hayes has been so bad. They don't even have a pick and roll partner for, like, nobody has a pick and roll partner. The only pick and roll partner that they've, tried to fit a square peg into the round hole here with has been Vanderbilt. We haven't seen much of that. Again, when was the last time we saw an Austin LeBron pick and roll, and especially of the North and South variety? It's been a really frustrating series, and I think Austin has drawn a lot of fair criticism, but I think a lot of people are getting kind of carried away on Austin without taking into account how poor a series the coaching staff has had. All right. Let's see. Oh, this is a fun, this is kind of interesting way. So Fred Joel 99 asks, would you play Hayes in the minutes when his foul trouble doesn't affect us, i.e. the Lakers are already in the bonus? Yes and no, because you would kind of like to be able to waste the fouls and not just give away points every time Jackson sets a bad screen or pushes somebody when he shouldn't be, and just kind of loses his head. But I can kind of see where you're going there. My bigger thing is the Lakers are going to get in the bonus eventually anyway. So are the Wolves. It's been a really physical series. And if teams don't get into the bonus, that's because the referees are refereeing like this. Right. So my thing is, if Hayes picks up 2 quick fouls in the first quarter, who gives a shit? He's going to play 8 minutes anyway. Keep him out there. Or if you start, I have a feeling JJ's going to start the 5-man lineup for the from the second half of last game. And here's the thing, and I saw Pete and Darius kind of made this point. Didn't get all the way there. I was like, come on, go one more step. But they were essentially like, all right, if you were prepared to make that adjustment, then you needed to do it. Doing it in only the second half makes it so that you are kind of up against it in terms of minutes that you can spare in the second half. What I think, I'm not going to put words in their mouths, but I can certainly say from my vantage point, what I would have preferred, as I've said all series, even coming into the series, I would have preferred that they start those 5 guys, Luka, Austin, LeBron, Rui, and Dorian, or Vando. I know. But if you start those 5 guys that finish that second half or play that whole second half, if you start those guys and then you bring in Jackson to be the screener in that second unit lineup, that makes a lot of sense to me. We never saw it in the second half. And part of the reason we didn't see it in the second half is because all of those minutes become higher and higher leverage over the course of the second half. So you can't quite waste a couple of Jackson Hayes minutes in the third quarter because you have that much less time to make up for whatever mistakes he makes. But if you start the game with those 5 guys and then go to Jackson Hayes there and it doesn't work out, then you have the whole rest of the game to make up for it. You're only going to play, if you're prepared to only play Jackson 4 minutes of it anyway, then let those 4 minutes come in a situation where he's more ideally used, or he's going up against lineups where he can be a little bit more useful. I don't know. Coaching's hard though. I will say this, like, and I think, like, I asked the question earlier, what would JJ Redick, the podcaster, say about JJ Redick, the head coach? I think the one thing that JJ would probably say after this entire endeavor is, holy shit, this is a lot harder than podcasters think. And he's right. It's easy for me to sit here on my leather couch, or on my leather office chair, or on my lazy boy in my living room, like wherever I'm watching this game. It's a lot easier for me to be like, come on, where's this? Like, it's a hell of a lot easier to do that. And I would imagine JJ Redick, after this experience, would, acknowledge and admit that. That said, there's no more time for learning experiences here. There's no more time for lessons, that teaching lessons that the Lakers can build on here moving forward. You have this year and next year before Austin gets paid. You have this year and next year before the end of LeBron's career really zooms into clarity. Like, this is the window that the Lakers have. And if you waste half of that window because the rookie head coach is that severely outcoached in the series, or because the roster is that bad, that makes this season pretty painful. And I hope we avoid that. All right, that is going to do it that's going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Thank you, everybody, for the questions, for the comments, for the listens, for everything over the course of the season. I previewed the game a little bit. I might do a little more of that on the lowdown, which is an RSS feed exclusive. So check that out whenever that runs. And then, next time I talk to you, we'll either be hopefully staring off into the distance at a potential comeback from 3-1, or assessing the season as it was and preparing for what promises to be, no matter how the series goes, this offseason is going to be must watch, must listen every minute of every day while we wait to see what the roster looks like next year. But I hope we get another at least couple games before we have to think about that. And ideally, couple series. We'll see. Have a good one, everybody.